based on the premise that any words we use that imply evil or bad or wrongness on the other person's part is the kind of thinking that creates violence on our planet. So nonviolent communication shows us a way of being even more honest, but being honest from the heart. Saying two things, basically: what's alive in you, how you are. And to do that very honestly, but without using any words that criticize, blame, judge. It's an honesty of the heart. The premise of nonviolent communication is that all language that criticizes or blames is a tragic expression of an unmet need. So when this chief screams murderer, he had a need that wasn't getting met. See? But he thinks that you have to tell people what's wrong with them to get them to change, when just the opposite is what often happens. What you see is what you get. If you see an employee as lazy because they're not getting things done as rapidly as you like, and they hear you using a word like lazy, don't expect them to enjoy doing the work. What you see is what you get. So here I ask both sides what their needs are, and now they're screaming diagnoses at each other. So my job was to use some technology that I'm going to show you how to use this evening. Giraffe ears. With this wonderful technology, you are conscious of what I just said, that all criticism, all blame is a tragic, suicidal expression of an unmet need. So with these ears, you learn how to hear what's alive in the other person behind any criticism or blame that they express. If we know how to connect with what's alive in each other without making any enemy images, any criticism, we can just hear each other's needs. It's amazing how conflicts which seem impossible to resolve almost seem to resolve themselves. So write down what need of yours isn't met in this situation. Nonviolent communication shows us ways of being more powerful than we can ever be through using punishment or reward. So if you are a czar or a king or a president or someone who wants to control those below them, you do not want people to have a consciousness of life, of their needs. Because people do not make good slaves when they're connected to life. So that's why we have been educated to associate the word needs as being needy, selfish. So this is a very important part of nonviolent communication, a need literacy. And what goes with the needs are our feelings. Because when our needs are being fulfilled, we feel pleasureful feelings. When our needs are not being fulfilled, we have painful feelings. So in nonviolent communication, we evaluate the person's behavior with reference to those three things: a clear observation, and then we tell the person how we feel about what they have done, and then we tell them what need of ours wasn't met. So that's a language of life. That's being honest by saying what's alive in us. Notice in those three things, there's no insinuation of wrongness on the part of the other person. we're answering the question how we are without saying what the other person is. But we don't stop there. We have a very important fourth ingredient that we want to add to that. Because when we tell people what they've done and how it doesn't meet our needs and the discomfort we feel as a result of that, we want to end on a clear request that tells the person what we would appreciate they're doing to better contribute to our well-being. So write that down. Imagine that you've told the person these first three things. You've told them what they've done and how you feel and what need of yours wasn't met. Now add to that a clear request, what you would like the person to do. Now the important thing here is to make sure that you tell them what you do want rather than what you want them to stop doing. So in nonviolent communication, we don't say, I want you to stop that. We say what we want them to start doing, what we want them to do instead. In communication, we want people to replace what they're doing with something that is better for them and better for us. And we use a very clear language, action language. We don't say what we want the person to be, such as, I want you to be more cooperative. It's too vague. We use very explicit, clear request in making requests. So any questions about those four ingredients that we've looked at so far that comprise honesty as defined in nonviolent communication? Now let's imagine that you decide to try this out. You go up to this person the next time you see them, and as best you can after this very quick introduction, you decide to try it out. So you say those four things to the person. You try to make clear to them what they've done without making any diagnosis. You then go into your heart and say how you feel and what needs of yours aren't being met by the behavior. And you end on a clear request. Now, predict how the person might respond. What would the worst thing be, for example? And write that down. Write down what's the worst thing that this person can say. Violent communication looks like. It's when we speak from the heart. We're very honest, but honest without blame and without demands, you see. We make clear requests, but never demands. Now, what's the difference between a request and a demand? See, they can sound the same, a request and a demand. Because some jackals, they make demands, but they express them in a very polite way, you see. So they will say to their child, I would like very much that you go in and clean up your room. And the child says, no. And then they turn pretty brutal. Did you hear what I said? Blah, 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 blah. So if people expect that when we make a request, that if we don't do as they request, they're going to be blamed or criticized, they hear a demand. So it's important when we make requests in nonviolent communication that it is a request, that the person knows that our objective is not to get what we want. We are trying to make a connection that will get everybody's needs met. So yes, we say what we want, but we only want the person to do it if they do it willingly. Now, when people trust that, they're far more likely to do it.